Hello and welcome back to Principles of Macroeconomics. I'm your host, Dr. B, and today we're going to be talking about the topic of unemployment, what it means with respect to macroeconomics, as we talk about the country as a whole, and we'll also talk about it from a business perspective, and we'll also get my perspective on it, whether you want it or not. All right. So what is employment? First of all, hopefully you've all had a job by now. If you haven't worked for someone else, hopefully you're opening your own company. If you're not doing that, hopefully you're doing something. Okay. The idea of being employed means you're working. That's obvious. The idea of being employed means you're collecting a paycheck. Whether it's in your business or someone else's business, you're being paid for your work. Sometimes somebody that's classified as being employed can be also unpaid. Unpaid positions are more like volunteer positions or internships, externships. Those are commonly unpaid positions, or a family member who's working for you and you're not paying them for whatever reason. You should be paying them. They're still employed. Yeah. But the idea of being employed means you're working and you're contributing to yourself, your family, your local economy. You're what we call being a productive member of society. That's what being employed means. You're producing. That's what it means to be a productive member of society. It means you're producing for the society. Yeah. And so you could be employed full time, which here in the United States is 32 hours and above. 32 hours to 40 hours and above is considered full time. Part time employees is 31 and a half hours and below. From 0 to 31 and a half hours is part time. Some states have their own definition of full time and part time, but primarily in the United States, 32 hours and above is full time. 31 and a half hours is part-time and below. We have what we call temporary absences from work, from being employed. Those would include things like vacation, illness, bad weather, other reasons why you would not be at work. And then there are those that are what we call unemployed. Unemployed are individuals who are not working. They're available to work. They are looking for work. And they want to work. Those are who we call unemployed. They're available to work. They want to work. They're looking for work. Cannot yet find work. They are called unemployed. The unemployed can also be considered people who have been laid off from their jobs and are willing to be are waiting to be recalled to that job. And we saw a lot of that during the pandemic. And then, so we talked about the employed and the unemployed. There's a third group. It's called not in the labor force. They're neither employed or unemployed. They're not working, period. They're not looking for work. They don't want to work. These are people who are full-time students, like some of you, homemakers, like some of you, retirees, like some of you, right? And that's fine. It's okay not to be in the labor force. You're a full-time student, you're a homemaker, you're retired. Yeah, you're not in the labor force because you're one of these three categories, which is totally fine. I've been in that category. I've been in the unemployed category, and I've been in the employed category. And oftentimes, during the course of your life, you will be classified as all three of those at some point. As of January 2016, very old statistic. This is an old book, by the way. It's not that different, really. I mean, it's actually pretty similar to what we're dealing with right now. employed 150 million, unemployed 7.8 million, not in the labor force, 94.1 million. I think the employed is shrinking a little bit. The unemployed also shrinking a little bit. The not in the labor force is growing. Why is that? Because there is a population shift happening in the United States today. More baby boomer generation, those who were in World War II, and older, or I'm sorry, younger, World War II and younger, the boomer generation. The most of them were born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 1940s, 50s, 60s, and maybe early 70s. They are leaving the workforce. They're retiring. Okay, so when they're retired, they're not working. So that's why it's the not in the labor force is growing currently. The employed is slightly shrinking, and the unemployed is slightly shrinking because here in the United States, our older generations are retiring, and they didn't have a lot of kids in the generations after them, so there's no one to replace them with, right? So eventually, the United States will have to be more open into accepting even more people from outside the United States into the country, because we'll have a lot of jobs to fill, which is the current problem that we're facing right now. The labor force is the total number of people employed and working and unemployed. That's the labor force. That's everyone who's willing and able to work, not and currently working. Willing, able, and currently working, and looking for work. We call those individuals part of the labor force. So it's the employed plus unemployed equals the total labor force. Employed plus unemployed equals the labor force. How do we find the unemployment rate? This is a very important formula for you to know. Hint, hint, it might appear on some type of final exam, but it'll definitely probably appear on your homework. Unemployment rate, it's the percentage of the labor force that is currently not working. They're unemployed. Unemployment rate is the number of unemployed people divided by the labor force times 100. That is the unemployment rate. Number of unemployed divided by the total labor force. Remember, total labor force is employed plus unemployed times 100. This is another very important formula for you to know. Hint, hint, may appear on a future exam. This is what we call the participation rate, labor force participation rate. And this shows us the number of adult individuals who are currently working in the labor force. Participation rate. Okay. The percentage of the population that chooses to work. Yeah. This is the number everyone's always interested in when the rates come out. It happens every month. Okay. It's the labor force, which is employed plus unemployed, divided by the adult population of the country times 100. So it's labor force, employed plus unemployed, divided by the adult population in the country times 100. And that gives you your labor force participation rate. Here we can see a couple of statistics in the labor force unemployment rate, participation rate. The statistics broken out by race and sex across adults. This was obviously very old data. This is 2014. it's probably changed slightly, I would think. So we have demographics of teenagers and adults, and yeah, and so this kind of gives us an idea of each demographic. It's historically looking, so it's 2014 is a little old. It just gives you an idea of how those rates break out. Labor market experience. Uh, Women of prime working age. It's funny. 25 to 54. Uh, it's actually a lot younger than that now. Most women in today's day and age, as they say, usually start working a lot earlier, 17, 18, and they usually work till they're older than 54, usually up to retirement age. Uh, Labor force comprised of men and women are similar rates of. They both have similar rates of unemployment. Prime working age, similar rates of labor force for both African American and Caucasian. There are unfortunately still higher rates of unemployment for African Americans, especially for African American women and men. That is getting better, which is fantastic. There's still a lot of work to be done in the country, as you know. For teenagers, the participation rate is relatively lower for the obvious reason because most of the time they are in school. But they are typically mostly unemployed rather than older workers. That's common. It's typical. When you're younger, you just don't work as much as you do when you're older. That's kind of how that works. All right. Here's a good one. This is called the natural rate of unemployment. The natural rate of unemployment. This figure is typically a little bit lower than the actual unemployment rate. Well, why is that? Because there is what we call cyclical employment. And this has to do with employment based off of the calendar year. It's like, not a lot of people work during the winter time or during the summer. They have seasonal jobs. So the natural rate is typically a little bit different. Here's a nice visual representation of labor participation rates over time. As you can see, the gap is closing, but it's still not where it needs to be, or where it should be, in my opinion, anyway. The official unemployment rates help us to measure joblessness. It helps us to get a gauge of how well the country is performing. But it's not perfect. These measures are never perfect. There's no like perfect formula for all this, right? People move into and out of the workforce very commonly. A lot of times people will get 2, 3 jobs. A lot of times they'll take months off, go on sabbatical, whatever. Or I'll take a season off, I'll take a year off, whatever. So moving in and out of the labor force is very common. Not all unemployment ends with the job seeker finding a job. Sometimes they just leave, they retire. After they're done, as they say. Some report being unemployed, but they might not be because they're leaving the market. That happens. So sometimes the reports are not always accurate, right? They may not be trying to find a job. Maybe they don't want to work. Or, my favorite, they're being paid under the table. Right? It's like, what does it mean to be paid under the table? It means that you're being paid off the books, as they say. You're receiving cash money, that type of thing. So yeah, so that Therefore, the unemployment rate's usually a little skewed for those reasons. Some people, they might want to work, but they become discouraged. Discouraged workers, they want to work, but they've kind of given up looking for a job. It's like, I'll just retire, I think. I don't know. That's what we call a discouraged worker. They kind of gave up. Measures of labor underutilization tells us how well individuals are being used to perform their jobs. It's a cute little table. Some workers work really hard, others don't. Others stop looking for work. So there's a large utilization of individuals, and so the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, good website, by the way. There's a lot of great data. So like if you're looking for a job, we'll say in accounting or in finance, or let's say you're looking for a job in hospitality, and you're like, I wonder how many people in DC work in this field. You can find out through the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can find out what the average wages are for each occupation. There's just a lot of great information on that website. So if you haven't looked at that already, it's bls.gov. bls.gov. Great website. I recommend you check it out. There's a lot of really good information on there. If there's a specific job that you're applying for, you're interested in, and you'll want to find out what the average wages are, great website to find out. But these are just definitions of individuals from that website. But overall, great website to check out. It's really awesome. Some measurements, we look at how long somebody's unemployed without work, right? It's like, okay, so you've been looking for work, you've been unemployed for a while. How long is that time, right? And it tells us if it's short unemployment, long unemployment, and typically it a lot of that determines how soon somebody will find a job, right? A lot of it has to do with effort, in my opinion. Some people they try really hard to find jobs. Sometimes they try too hard. Sometimes they don't try hard enough. And a lot of it has to do with their overall perception on themselves and their situation. And so a lot of that that part is observed based, and that sometimes that becomes what they call the economy's unemployment problem. Joblessness for long periods of time. If you have a resume and you got a large gap of time, sometimes you find yourself struggling to explain to your potential employer why that happened, or so it's a lot of times it has to do with how long you've been looking for it. Also note, unemployment rate will never be zero. It's impossible for it to be zero. It's impossible. Not when you're talking about hundreds of millions of people. It'll always fluctuate around the natural rate of unemployment. We have what we call a frictional unemployment. Frictional. Sometimes someone like me, I'll take my time when it comes to looking for work. And I'll look for that job that best suits my needs and skills and my tastes and my lifestyle and whatever. Sometimes that amount of time could be short, could be long. It depends. But it's important that when you are looking for work, that you look for something that will be long-term and something that you want to do. And it's something that your skills will be best suited for. We have this thing called structural unemployment. This is based off the number of jobs available in the market, and there's not enough people to fill those jobs. That's what we're having right now. That's what the biggest problem is. We have more jobs available than we have people to fill them with. Okay. So, so that's the current problem. Before we used to have problems where there'd be long-term unemployment because there weren't enough jobs to go around. Right now, it's the opposite. And a lot of that has to do with people leaving the labor force. And a lot of it has to do with wages. So wages, how are wages set? Well, there's laws, obviously. There's minimum wage laws, both federal and state. And then there's unions, efficiency wages, cost of living wages, etc. Wages are currently rising, but they are not rising fast enough. Why is that? Well, right now we have, and we talked about this. Right now in 2021, we're experiencing very high levels of inflation, where the price of everything is going up. I'm sure you've all seen it by now. Price of everything has gone up substantially, and your wage has not. Most of you have not received a raise in pay recently. I know I haven't. And I don't expect to see one. It would be nice to get one because the cost of everything went up. I'm paying higher bills, receiving the same amount of money, just like the rest of you, right? So, while yes, wages are going up now, but they're just not where they need to be, and that's the other reason why people don't want to work some jobs. It's like, yeah, everyone's hiring. Oh, we're hiring, you're hiring, they're hiring, everyone's hiring. Yeah, you're right. That's true. But if you look at the wages that they're trying to hire people at, oftentimes I'm like, if I do consulting, right? You all know I do consulting once in a while. If I go to a business and I say, hey, you got all these empty jobs, what's going on? Well, usually the first thing I look at is, well, how much are you paying them? And if they're not paying enough, I'm like, well, there's your obvious reason, right? It's like, oh, I can't afford to pay more. It's like, well, then you can't afford to keep that job. That's why it's a never-ending battle with wages. That's for another conversation. Let's see, Dario. Isn't it also based on taxes? Which question were you asking, Dario? I'm sorry, I missed that comment you made. Isn't what based on taxes? On the wages? Yeah, sometimes it depends. So taxes. No, I mean nobody likes to pay taxes, but so here's what I'm going to say about this. So right now, as you know, we have inflation, and our wages are pretty much the same. Higher minimum wage. Okay, he says because we got taxed a lot more in DC because of our higher minimum wage. That's not necessarily true. Here's why. So the tax brackets, the way that they're designed. So yes, it is true, and kind of true. Here's what happened. Okay, when the states decide to raise their minimum wages, like DC, for example, DC decided to raise minimum wage. I think it was like $15, $18, something like that. So when it goes up, and it's going up, right? What happens is that if you're a full-time employee and you're hourly, we'll say, for example, let's say you used to make, on average, you used to make $38,000 a year on minimum wage, something like that, right? You made $38,000 a year on minimum wage. Minimum wage goes up. Now all of a sudden you're making $42,000 a year because minimum wage went up. Good for you, except for this part. So from when you went from 38,000 to 42,000, you got pushed into a higher tax bracket. And with that higher tax bracket, you're paying more in taxes. So that's kind of the catch when it comes to making more, is that you're going to get put into a higher tax bracket, which ultimately means that, yes, you'll pay more in taxes. Hope that helps to answer your question, Dario. But yeah, that's kind of what happens, right? With minimum wage. Minimum wage goes up. Everyone wants to get paid more minimum wage. Yeah, hey, don't get me wrong. I'm not disagreeing. But the bad part that nobody thinks about is, oh yeah, I'm making $15 an hour, $15 an hour. That just puts you in a higher tax bracket. So that $15 an hour is not as much as you're thinking it's going to be, because you're going to pay more in taxes. So, yeah, good discussion. Yeah, cool. Very cool. So when you're looking for work, we try to match our skills and our tastes. Taste meaning like work-life balance, benefits. Those are tastes. Yeah. Skills are the stuff that you learn. You're in this class with me. You're in the accounting class. You're in this class. Now, when you're done with your degree, you get your associates, and then you decide, oh, I'll work some more, get my bachelor's degree, work some more. You have new skills. You have new knowledge. You have a business degree by the time you're done, right? Which means, oh, I know more about business. That's skills. Those are skills you earned from us at UDC. Okay, great. You got those skills. Now you take those skills and you apply to jobs and go, I got my degree, in the hopes of earning more money, right? That's the idea. That's why you're in school right now, is to learn and hopefully earn a better wage, earn a better living, run your own business, right? That's why you're here. You're here for a reason, right? You're improving your life. That's why you're in school. You're gaining those skills. But now when you go to look for work, you have new skill set. And so each job has different distributions and information about the candidacies, vacancies. So when you start to look for work, if you're not already, you look at the job description and you say, oh, I like those benefits. Oh, I have those skills. Oh, I can, that pays okay, things like that. Right? You try to closely match yourself with that job. That's the idea when you're searching for work. And over time, things change. Things change over time. We know that. There's changes in demand in the labor force. There's changes within companies. There's change in composition of the demand there's changes in industries like we're going from the oil industry to the electric industry. Yeah, those are changes. Yeah. The changes in the region. There's change DC. This region used to be heavy in manufacturing. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now we're heavy in service, right? Those were changes here in DC. There's changes in internet patterns of international trade. There's people going across borders for work. Yeah, absolutely. So all of these changes lead to changes in the economy. Right now we're seeing more construction. We're seeing less mining. We're seeing more infrastructure. We're seeing more services, more healthcare, more technology, a little bit more manufacturing. These are all changes that we're experiencing now in the employment sector. What is it? So there's a reduction in the amount of unemployment because there's more opportunity. There are government programs to help individuals to find work, like public training programs and employment agencies that help you to find jobs. Here in District of Columbia, we have DOES. DOES. That agency helps individuals living in DC to help it find you employment. DOES. They're a great organization, by the way. Here at UDC, we actually have partnership programs with DOES. Especially for those of you who have been to the Bertie Backus campus, you know that DOES is on the second floor of our building. That's how closely we work together. Things that help us when we are unemployed, it's called unemployment insurance. When you're unemployed, you can, if you become unemployed, you can apply for what you call unemployment insurance benefits. And what this is it's a payment to you based off of an insurance program that you and your employer have been paying into. Well, actually, your employer's been paying into. And what it does is it's basically a temporary income assistance until you become employed again, right? Ideally. It's a government assistance program, partially protects your income wages, helps to mitigate that risk, right? And you can qualify if you become unemployed, and it was not because of your fault, right? If you get fired, that's different. Or if you quit, that's different. If you quit or get fired, you typically are not eligible for unemployment benefits. But if you're laid off at no fault of your own, or you're out of work at no fault of your own, then you probably are eligible. An example of that would be the pandemic. A lot of our students got laid off during the pandemic because they're in the service business. You work at hotels and restaurants and areas where there's a lot of people in contact, right? And then you were laid off for a couple of months, and then you started slowly but surely going back to work. And now there's a huge demand, right? But yeah, and during that time, hopefully you got some help through this program. 50% of former wages for 26 weeks. That's about right. That's about the average payout. Reduces hardship. You didn't default because you were receiving some unemployment benefits. Increases the amount of unemployment. The benefits stop when you go back to work, obviously. Otherwise, you're still unemployed. You're still looking for work. You're less likely to turn down unattractive offers, and you're less likely to seek guarantees of job security. I'll say this one thing about job security. It doesn't exist. Job security does not exist. I want you to understand that. Job security does not exist. It exists in your textbook. It does not exist in real life. Job security is a thing of the past, my friend. Anyone could be let go from their job for any reason. So job security is not a real thing. Just keep being good at your job. Keep being good at what you do. You'll be all right. Structural unemployment. It's the number of jobs available. If it's insufficient, it's structural unemployment. Minimum wage laws can also cause unemployment. Why is that? If the employer can't afford to pay you the minimum wage, they remove your job, which makes you unemployed. That's why, what happened when they raised the $15 minimum wage for McDonald's? They let go a lot of their employees, and they replaced them with kiosks. Think about that for a second. Minimum wage laws force the wage to remain above the equilibrium level. Higher the amount of labor supplied, smaller quantity demanded. Remember, equilibrium is where supply and demand equal. So there's a surplus of labor is equal to the amount of unemployment. If I got more employees than I got jobs, then I have unemployment. More employees than there are jobs available means there's a surplus of labor, which means there's a surplus in unemployment. Wages are typically kept above equilibrium levels, hopefully. Usually, wages are above minimum wage. Unions help wages to be kept above minimum wage. And there are what we call efficiency wages, cost of living wages. Wages should be kept above equilibrium levels. This causes some unemployment to naturally occur. Unions are very common here in the United States. It's where workers associate with each other. They bargain with employers for wages, benefits, and working conditions. There are 11% of all workers in the United States attribute to unions. This it was in comparison in 1940s and 50s to 33%. Why did it go down, you might be asking? Because unions become less relevant over time. Working conditions improve for everyone as a result of laws passed by Congress. Minimum wage laws were new. Okay, that's actually still a pretty new concept, minimum wage law. 1960s, by the way. There are certain laws that didn't exist in the 1940s and 50s. There were no working condition laws. You're lucky to be breathing in some of those buildings. Uh, and unions can be viewed as kind of like a cartel in some ways, or shape, or form, because they typically have a lot of power. They're very powerful. They help with collective bargaining, which is nice. They negotiate wages with management. Sometimes they go on strike. It's because they're not. It's because they're not happy with the wages or working conditions or any of those things. They go on strike. It reduces production, sales, and profit for the business, but it helps get their point across. That's happening right now with John Deere. Is the most recent one to be on strike. Before that was Southwest Airlines. Strikes happen all the time. It's very normal. It's where the union kind of revolts against management for getting better wages. They want to get better wages and better working conditions, etc. Better benefits. Union workers typically earn 10 to 20% more than other workers that do not belong to unions. That is typically true. Their wages are always typically above minimum wage. They have lower rates of unemployment, higher quality of labor to meet a smaller demand. Most of them are employed. Some are not. Those who are unemployed might stay unemployed and take jobs that are not within the union. And a lot of it has to do with the type of industries, like the auto industry, teachers union, various industries. The reason why they belong to those types of unions is really to help as it relates to their wages, their living environment, as it relates to work and benefits. Workers who are not in the unions bear some costs as well. Are unions good or bad for the economy? It depends, in my opinion. It really depends on what the purpose is of the union. If the idea is to improve working conditions, wages, benefits, typically they're good because they're collectively good. They can be somewhat bad, though, because if they get too much power and influence, it can really change other things, within the political environment. People say that they're good because they do help work environments and get better wages. and things like that. I agree with that. I think unions are good to a degree, and they can really help the companies overall. And if they're happy and productive, they keep doing their thing. But if they're not, then they strike and other things happen. So there's some backfire to that. But the idea is you want to make sure that your wages are efficient and that you're paying your employees above the minimum wage. They're healthy, they're happy. If it's just like if you're being paid well and treated well, there's a good chance you'll stay working for that company. That's obvious. They're treating you well. Well, you got good benefits, decent pay. You're doing all right. You'll probably stay with them. You probably won't look for other jobs. But if they're not paying you well, they're not being fair to you. If you're not receiving good benefits like your peers, then there's a chance that you'll walk. That's just the way it works. Better paid employees, they the more money you make, usually you're healthier. Why are you healthier? You eat better, you exercise, you take care of yourself, you're more productive. Why is that? Because you're receiving health benefits, decent pay, decent benefits. You get paid time off, etc. So better pay, better weight, better benefits typically results in more productive and healthy employees. The opposite is also true. Turnover will go down if you pay your employees more and you give them better benefits. I won't leave my job if I get paid well and I got good benefits. That's the case, right? For most of us, that's the case. But look at what's happening right now. If you look at the situation of this pandemic and what happened in the labor force currently, a bunch of people are leaving their jobs. In August of 2021, they called it the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation, August 2021. Why did that happen? Why was the turnover so high in August 2021? What caused that turnover to happen? Any ideas? Would anyone like to interject and tell me why you think in August of 2021 we saw a turnover in the United States working population? We saw 3% of our entire population resign from their jobs in August of 2021.
Was it due to the vaccine?
I think that might be part of it. But I don't think that's the whole story. Because 3% is a lot. I mean, a lot. 3% is a very high number. I think the vaccine might be part of it. What else? Why do we work? Why do we work? Why would you leave your job?
A party wasn't getting paid good enough.
Yes. I think that's a bigger reason than the vaccine part. Go ahead, Meredith. Is that pretty much it? The vaccine not making enough? I think the wage part has more to do with it than anything else. And I would also say that the burnout rate is very high. My wife, she works in healthcare. She is a psychologist in the emergency department at a local hospital. Okay. She and a lot of her colleagues are very burned out from this whole thing. Okay. She saw almost 70% of her whole department resigned. A lot of nurses, a lot of doctors. They resigned. Why did they resign? They're probably burned out. How do you get burned out? You become overburdened by your job. Your stress level goes through the roof. You're not being paid as much as you should be. The company isn't valuing you being there. that causes burnout. If you don't treat your employees well by paying them decent wages, providing them with good benefits, and giving them a reason to stay with you, they will leave, which results in turnover. So, what happened in August 2021? Well, a number of different factors. Yes, maybe a little bit attributed to the vaccine requirement. But I think most of it has to do with the wages people are being paid and how they're being treated at work. And of course, the benefits. But I think those things combined kind of caused what we call a perfect storm and caused 3% of the United States working force to resign in August of 2021. And so now, as you can see, we have a lot of job openings. And people are moving around. They're going from different. Some may have worked in hospitality, and then when they got laid off, they decided to get a job in healthcare, or maybe they were working in healthcare. They decided to resign. Now they're working in hospitality, or they went from hospitality to retail, or retail to manufacturing, or from hospitality to construction. I don't know. But people move sectors, right? They don't just stay in the same sector all the time. It's like I like hospitality. I worked in hospitality. Look at me now. I'm a professor. It's like how did I go from being a financial controller of one of the world's largest hotel organizations to being a university professor at UDC? How did that happen? My taste changed over time. My perception of life changed over time. So I moved sectors. Very common, very common. And that's what causes turnover. There's a lot of things cause turnover. Like worker quality, for example. Higher pay typically attracts a higher quality of worker. That's normal, yeah. Higher quality of pay, higher quality workers. Makes sense. Higher wages encourage people to stay where they are. Gives them an incentive to keep working for that company. And that, my friends, is the conclusion of an exciting chapter on unemployment. If you ever have any questions about things like your job, if you're like, Dr. B, I'm kind of tired of working in this particular sector. I want to do something else. Feel free to talk to me. I'm always interested in helping you with through those things. And a lot of it, when you look at yourself and what you're doing, it's always important to look inward and really understand who you are, what your tastes are, what your preferences are, what your skills are. And once you know who you are, you have a better understanding of yourself. It will certainly help you when it comes time to look for that next opportunity, the next job. Because the more that you understand yourself, the more that you can apply yourself to that job, and you'll stay there for a while and you'll probably be happy. But just anytime you need help, you just reach out to me. I'll be happy to work with you. Yeah, help you through it. Okay, so any questions on unemployment and the jobs in the United States, all of that? You're all good. Okay. Well, hopefully this was helpful. I always enjoy these conversations. Just a quick recap where we are in the classroom. Module 3. We're in week 10. Yeah, I know, week 10, right? By Sunday night, by Halloween evening, Sunday night, Chapter 14 quiz, Chapter 15 homework. Remember, you have 2 attempts on each. Yeah? So if you're not satisfied with your grade the first time around, try it again. But please make sure that they're on time. It's really, really important that you submit all of your work on time every time. Why? Because this is a fast-moving class. We got a lot of work going on. So, but in the meanwhile, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to email me, call me, set up office hours with me, all of those good things. Any questions, comments, concerns? You all good? Okay. As always, thank you so very much for your time this evening. I appreciate all of you. I sincerely appreciate all of your hard work. If you need anything, please feel free to email, call, set up office hours, whatever it takes. I'm here for you 100% of the time. And as always, my friends, I want you to please stay safe, wash your hands, do the right things, and I'll see you all again next time. Thank you all so much. Appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.